yeah, this is a great movie to vibe to too. I'm happy that you guys wanted to see it because I hadn't heard anything about this, despite it having that like long, choppy history with all the studios. And then it like popped up. I was like, oh, 2D animation. Like, yes, yeah, let's watch it. And I really liked it for what it was. I mean, I don't know, Bridget, if you watch it with your kids, but yeah, I thought it was the perfect one.
So I actually watched, I multitasked earlier. So I was like working and watching it, but I kept like getting distracted by the movie because, I'm like doing two things at once, but then I'd just be like, and I'm like, oh, I'm running my clock. Let me stop. Let me stop my clock. But so I actually, it like came on Netflix, and for like 2 days, like 2 days before, it was like, hey, Nimona's coming out in a couple days. And I was like, okay, I'll make sure I mention it to Scarlett because it said like based on rating and everything. I'm like, that should be something in her wheelhouse because she's about to be 10, thinks that she's 18, but she thinks she's a teenager. And so I was like, that'll be perfect. Well, this girl, I was like, hey, you want to watch this movie with me? I already watched it. Excuse me. She literally, the second something that I guess is like, well, it honestly was also on Oliver's Netflix. So I guess it's like all ages. I didn't look at the rating really, but so it was on his too, but it's like the day it dropped, she immediately watched it.
I don't like when I want to watch a movie with someone else and I feel like I'm like mentally sort of waiting for that person to watch it with me and then like they watch it without me. That's one of my pet peeves. Like the Barbie movie is coming out, obviously. And
Yes.
if you haven't seen the marketing, the Barbie movie is coming out. um, and,
Barbie mixed with Oppenheimer, of course.
yeah, and Ryan is like deployed, but he's like for like the flooding up in Vermont, and he's like just go to the Barbie movie, like have fun, like, and I'm like the fun is going together and like talking about it with you, but I'll probably still go, like if he doesn't come back early enough.
I'll go with you. I will go with you because
Yeah,
I want to be so obnoxious. I want to go. I want to see it.
it is definitely
Outing.
like the most hyped movie right now, in my opinion. Like, um, but yeah, this was a good time filler while we wait for Barbie to get here. Nimona.
Yeah.
Nimona.
Netflix marketing can be hit and miss, but this one had great thumbnail game, I thought. The thumbnails were kind of compelling. Great facial expressions.
I thought so too. And usually I feel like when I see a cartoon come up that looks like adulty animation-ish, but it's not like a series, I'm interested. Like this was good. I liked it a whole lot. And it wasn't an adult one, but it really plays for both. It plays for everyone, I think.
So yeah, this is the Thoughtcast, conversations about animation. I'm Philip Elke, up here in northern Minnesota, joined by Jody Pulaski and Scarlett. That's your daughter, Bridget.
Yeah.
In Georgia. The two of you join in. Thank you so much for being a part of the Thoughtcast and this conversation we're having about an animated film on Netflix, Nimona, the follow-up essentially to the now defunct Blue Sky Studios I guess line of animated films that concluded with Spies in Disguise. Jody, I think you were on that episode. Just you, right? Didn't we talk some Spies in Disguise?
It wasn't me, but it
Okay.
maybe was Alex.
Okay, I can't remember. Yeah, Bridget, what you weren't on that one, were you?
No, I don't think I had come into the podcast yet at that time.
Yeah,
I came
maybe,
in for Stranger Things, maybe?
yeah,
I think it was Stranger Things.
Yeah, okay, so but yeah, that was the movie about also theme of like transformation. Uh you get the characters turning into birds. That was
Oh my
Will
gosh,
Smith.
I
Will
did.
Smith,
It
yeah.
was me. It was me. Sorry. As soon as you say Will Smith, it clicks. Clearly, that movie was a little forgettable for me, so I
Sure.
apologize. But now that you're saying Will Smith and pigeons, it's flying back.
Yes. Yeah,
Hey, and
Pigeon.
Tom Holland. Okay,
Tom
I was
Holland.
like, I'm pretty sure it was the Will Smith movie, and I'm pretty sure Tom Holland's in it, but I had to look it up. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, they got unceremoniously shut down by Disney, really, because that studio was creation under Fox, 20th Century Fox, and then now that is a brand currently owned by Disney. and Blue Sky Studios was acquired. But yeah, no is no longer. So, but I guess enough people were able to remain on the project of Nimona, this film directed by Nick Bruno and Troy Quayne, screenplay by Robert L. Baird and Lloyd Taylor, based on the 2015 graphic novel of the same name by N.D. Stevenson, set in a sci fantasy. So science fiction and fantasy hybrid world. So lots going on here. This movie is about running time 99 minutes, fairly short, rated PG. I thought it was fairly, directly aimed at kids, but it's got plenty of things to make it appealing to adults as well. So, yeah, it is a sort of different style of animation. It's cell shading, still 3D wireframe animation, but not in the traditional textured DreamWorks, Pixar, current day Disney animation style, but more like what we saw demoed with movies like the short films from Disney, Paperman or Feast. And a few movies have kind of adopted that style. Of course, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse most famously incorporates a cel-shaded animation style. So yeah, that was appealing to you, Jody, particularly, and Bridget. What did both of you think about like the look of Nimona?
I really liked it. I like this sort of 2D stylization. I'm not exactly sure like what you call it, but it's very fluid without being like Pixar animation, which I'm not a huge fan of. And that's probably like why this one stood out to me. Like we talked about earlier, just even the poster for it on the Netflix page, I thought it looked really appealing. And I really loved like the color scheme that they used for this like fantasy sci-fi thing. And not only that, something I really loved was like the time they put it in. It was sort of like medieval, but it's also very futuristic. So I thought that was great. I thought they were a little lacking actually with some of the animation in like the background, but for the characters themselves, I thought it was spot on. I really enjoyed this style.
Yeah, and that the review that you recommended that you sent us, he actually compared it to Klaus, which I thought was a good comparison in terms of animation, because it's like they're not like it's like 3D that kind of looks like 2D, which I appreciate. Like it looks like it took some time to do, and like all of the characters were very well formed. Even ones that weren't like the main characters still looked good. I kind of agree with what Jody said though, is that sometimes the backgrounds didn't seem like they focused as much, like they were not as focused on them as the characters. But other than that, like I was not fazed by it. If I was looking for something to nitpick, I would be like, yeah, you guys could have done a bit more. And that's kind of something that review talked about, was like, oh, we would have liked to see like more about the town and more about this, but it's kind of focused on just the characters, which is fine.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had to make certain budgetary sacrifices, considering kind of the storied process by which this movie had to eventually secure release. It's impressive, honestly, that this thing even made it to print, after the studio was closed down. But I do remember hearing that, this was a movie that was like in the works from Blue Sky, following the Spies in Disguise, and it's been released by Annapurna Pictures, distributed by Netflix. And I think there is a new division of Annapurna now, just called Annapurna Animation. So they are going to attempt to have their own animation division with future projects, I'm sure, in the works. It's very, very impressive that they were able to put this out in the time that they did. I'm sure, it's been kind of the idea for it's probably been tossed around in some form or another ever since 2015, the graphic novel. I'm sure was envisioned as, potential source material for an eventual film. But yeah, this interesting concept is it's now here, and it features the voice talents of Chloe Grace Moretz as the titular character, Riz Ahmed as a knight, not necessarily her sidekick, as we'll discuss, but he's sort of the ostensible hero of this film. The character that the audience is supposed to sympathize with the most, and then they go on this adventure to try to save their kingdom. I don't know, it's it doesn't go into heavy detail on the lore, on the world building. Could have used a little more of that, but it's also kind of nice that it didn't get too bogged down by that kind of thing, which it easily could. The Westeros and the Middle Earth of it all. I don't know. We didn't even hear not try not to spoil this too much, but the inciting incident in the beginning, really early on in the film, there's a monarch character who gets killed, and do they even talk really about the succession of this character? I don't think so. I think it's basically assumed that the director is now the acting head of state in the kingdom, as far as we know. So stuff like that. The intrigue, it's kind of light on that, but it's more of just a character study. What else intrigued you guys?
Well, I will say that the backstory of Glora, that's like as much background as you get.
Yeah.
In terms of characters. It's like, and then you hear that the knight, I've already forgotten his name. The one who, does the thing. Like he grew up.
Oh, yeah. What's his
Ballister?
name?
Ballister. I was like, it's something.
Ballister. Okay, yeah.
Riz
Ahmed. Yeah.
Which, when I looked up the actor or the voice actors earlier, I was like, man, he kind of looks like that character Riz Ahmed does.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, they kind of look similar. But yeah, other than that, it's like, oh, he was, just a poor common boy, and now he's gonna be a knight. And that's really like all the lead up you get, and then it's present day. So I thought that was like, I mean, maybe they did it because they just kind of want to get to like the meat of the actual story. I think this would be if people wanted, I guess, more information, like, oh, what is this? Why is this? How did we get here? It would be interesting to do like a Netflix series maybe, or like a sequel that goes a little more into it. Like, why is Nimona the way that she is? I mean, they kind of gave us that, but not really. Like, what is she?
Mm-hmm.
Shapeshifter, but like how so, and like what's her lore? Yeah. One thing that kind of like didn't make sense to me is like, okay, so they have these like very different statuses somehow in this kingdom. Like some people are allowed to be knights, other people are like considered lower class, like Ballister was not someone that you would potentially have being part of this, group. But it kind of didn't like matter at all to talk about that class system. They could have just kind of skipped it altogether and just been like, okay, this guy's a knight, and somehow he, becomes on the wrong side of the group, because like throughout the movie they never really reference again how he came from these like super humble beginnings, or how he's sort of like pushing against the grain by being the one and only like quote unquote like lower class who made it to upper class. Like you never really see him like pursuing that passion all that much. So I don't really even understand why they had to say from the beginning that he was like the odd man out, because they could have just had him become the odd man out by shooting. Unless I missed something in the middle, I just felt like that part didn't matter. I miss something in the middle?
I don't think so. I think why they did that, because I don't think that there's necessarily like a class system. I think it's like common folk and royal lineage people. So the people who are the kings and like the heads of state are from royal lineage. And so I think they gave him that as a definite kind of, I don't know what word I'm looking for. so that the person who ends up being the villain has a reason to not like him that is like across the board bad, I guess. It's like,
Sure.
oh, I don't like them because he shouldn't be a part of this because he's not worthy. Because I guess they could have found something else to make him not worthy, but they're probably also going based off of the graphic novel, which I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. And there was probably a little more build up when it came to the book about these like commoners versus like I think you're right. There was like a royal bloodline or like something like this that like attached them through.
Yeah, there's a lot of implied stratification in any feudal society, any kind of Middle Ages themed environment because that was just how society was organized in these earlier times. People were either landed, there were nobles, there were aristocrats, they were royalty, or they were commoners, they were peasants, they were serfs. And yeah, there was a significant division, in between all of these various groupings. Here, it's not nearly quite as extremely, the various social strata, I don't think, are quite as divided. It's a fairly cohesive society that's developed technology, and it's sort of a Blade
like
Runner.
everybody has a smartphone. Nobody's like not allowed to walk the streets and like see the skyscrapers. So they're all like on somewhat even playing field. You're right.
Yeah, it's not a hellhole of a world. But also, yeah, there's definitely some implied sense of know your place. And this character is a commoner, Ballister, who ascends to potentially being a knight, whereas normally in feudal societies you'd have to have some kind of nobility in order to be eligible to be knighted. But
have you guys seen A Knight's Tale?
Yeah, yeah.
With Heath Ledger? Because that's literally kind of the story, is that he is not, and they make up a lie, and then they're like, the prince is like, you know what? I like you. We're gonna lie and say that you're noble so you can be a knight. The end. That's basically the story.
So yeah, the caste system, there's a little bit of that, but not enough to be distracting or kind of beating you over the head with. I mean, there are lots of themes here. I mean, this is I'm not gonna probably necessarily use the W word in this episode, but that's because we can just straight up say, there's a lot of queer messaging in this film, intentionally so.
Yeah, literally right off the bat. Like they didn't give us like even like 2 seconds thing. I was like, I had no idea actually that there was going to be like a gay couple sort of presented in this movie. Like I didn't know, because I usually when there's something like that, I feel like on Facebook or on social media, there's like a lot of like upheaval and like angry posts, but like I knew nothing about it. So as soon as he said, I love you, I was like, oh, they're such good friends. And then he held his hand. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, they're together then, I guess,
Yeah, they like, he's like, oh, I love you. And I'm like, oh, and then he like put his head on it. They like held hands. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause like, I think when I think in a lot of things too, like things too with marketing is that sometimes they like market that aspect in regards to movies, and like the marketing, nothing it would do with that. But even though it would have been kind of funny if they just hinted at it, and then it was like, harks back to like the historical things where you're reading and they're like, oh yeah, these two men just lived together for 45 years as best friends, slept in the same room and everything because they were just the best of besties. But I was like, I like the progressive themes. I'm about that. I'm for this.
I really like when they present it in a way that just is displayed as like factual. Like there's no real, like the society doesn't seem to really be pushing against it. I mean, their relationship isn't like this big out in the open thing, but you don't get anything in the movie that's like saying that it's wrong or it's right. It's sort of just like an existing fact, and the movie goes on as such. And I always think about, with Disney princess movies, eventually, like when they bring maybe a chubbier princess in or a princess that's like different, I really hope they do a similar thing where it's like, that's just a characteristic of that character, but it's not like the whole plot. Like the whole storyline shouldn't be about her being chubby, and like the whole storyline doesn't need to be about them being um, a couple that a gay couple. I like that it was just sort of, this is what it is. Okay, let's continue on.
Yeah, there's already ways in which the main protagonists are on the fringes of society. Ballister Boldheart is, and I guess in the comic he's known as Ballister Blackheart. Maybe his name gets changed when he gets knighted or something. That'd be an interesting concept to go from Blackheart to Boldheart as part of the plot.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I've been off the podcast for a while, so I've like learned how to interrupt too much. But I think in Native American culture, when they move from like child to manhood, they're given a new name or a different name. So that would be kind of a cool thing, because I do think you see that in some cultures.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but Ballister, he's I think, the implication is that he's, not only like a commoner, he was probably like an orphan or, from a very poor part of the community.
Yeah, they showed him kind of like as an orphan.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Mm-hmm. He basically, I think, was probably raised within this, academy that, is all about rearing kids to become knights eventually. Yeah, and then of course Nimona is this magical sort of elemental being who can shapeshift, and we don't really know where she comes from, how old she is. Of course, this is a very insular kingdom as well. There's a giant wall. It's like Attack on Titan or something.
Yeah,
the way
he said that in the review, and I was like, yes, because we just finished the last season, or the last part that's out, and I was like, that's right. That is kind of like that. They don't know what's outside the walls.
Yeah, this culture, is a bit, perhaps paranoid. They're a bit, isolationist in their thinking. But yeah, like the animation style and the feudal, kind of setting, and
but also sci-fi.
But well. It definitely reminds me, of course, it kind of a somewhat auspicious rainbow coalition of colorful characters that I think is meant to promote representation, so that kids see different cultures and races and people groups represented in their media. And that's a pretty common trend that you see in kids media nowadays. There's a lot more representation of various demographics, but you find all of these things, I think, in another Netflix series that's very similar aesthetically, and that's The Dragon Prince. Are any of you familiar with that?
No, Scarlett loves that. Okay, yeah, Scarlett's a big fan of The Dragon Prince. We've watched a lot of it.
Okay. It almost wouldn't have surprised me to see this be like a spin-off of The Dragon Prince, because that also has the cell shading animation, of course, the medieval power system and all that stuff.
Well, I would say, so when I saw that Annapurna were the ones who helped like produce it, I honestly am not surprised by the way that it looks, because I play a lot of Annapurna games, and like they did Stray this last year, and it's very much like that aesthetic, and so they have a lot of really pretty games. And so I was like, when I saw that, I was like, I didn't know that they did animation, and maybe this is like, maybe they don't do it all the time. Now, you said that they were making like an animation company, so I was like, I was like, that would be interesting, because their games are really nice to look at. So I'm not surprised that it was very similar.
Sorry, MVP of this movie, by the way, is Quispy Dragon, the mascot of
the cereal.
The cereal. Is it called Crispy Crunch or something? It's something.
It was
like
with
that.
a W for sure. It was like Crispy.
The mascot's name is Quispy, but the cereal, it is spelled KR, Crispy. So there's a bit of a distinction there, but no, the dragon character itself, Quispy, is noteworthy because it is an actual hand-drawn animated character, and it's not done in the sort of wireframe cell shading style of the rest of the film. So yeah, just some interesting deviations in animation style with some of these elements, and Quispy Dragon, just genius, voiced by the comic book creator Andy Stevenson.
Well, I thought it was funny when Nimona turns into the Quispy Dragon, that when she blows her fire, it's actually cereal balls. And I was like, that's a fun power.
Yeah, I mean that the moment, definitely there are moments that make you wonder just how OP is Nimona. You think that she's maybe actually been defeated at one point, and but no, she turns into this giant dragon and just kind of overcomes that brief inconvenience. So yeah, you're always wondering. I mean, we need to get into the character of Nimona herself.
She's like a crazy little gremlin. But I really do wonder if she's like this ageless spirit, because you find out she's been around for like over 1,000 years. And is she the one and only of her kind? Do we ever find anything like that out? I mean, she's able to morph into all these different animals and creatures and characters, and also mask herself as other humans, or when she's able to be Ballister's lover. I can't remember his name.
It was like golden something.
Golden Loin.
Golden Loin.
Yeah, what a unique name there.
They get creative with the name. Yeah, it is sort of the J.K. Rowling convention of like very conspicuous sounding names, like, oh, that your name is Dennis, and now you're a dentist, or along those lines. But yeah, Ambrosia's golden lion.
Yeah, Ambrosia.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. Well, they kind of like they're like, oh, he's the golden child because he's Golith, whatever her name is. Well, he was the like descendant of her.
Yeah.
But I like that he didn't end up being the villain. They had like Todd, the jerk knight, and I was like, good. I was like, I'm glad that like the golden boy is nice, and I guess also his boyfriend, but like he's nice and he's not a jerk, even though he's like, the most royal of the royal knights, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bold Heart. Todd, I think it was actually short for like Thaddeus or Tadius or something. It's
Thaddeus.
Yeah.
It is Thaddeus.
Okay, yeah. So interesting choices with a lot of these world building elements. Yeah, Glorith is the legendary heroine around which the society is built. Glorith, I mean, and a derivation of glory, of course. From 1,000 years ago, vanquished a great black monster and enclosed the kingdom in a high wall. So like there could be any number of threats that could come into the kingdom from beyond the wall, and Nimona and similar spirits would be just a few examples of those kinds of threats. There's that big gun it's on the wall, but when it actually is about to get used later on in the film, it's not exactly aiming over the wall. Such tends to occur in certain contexts where hypervigilance is the rule of the day. You only end up hurting yourself.
That too. And she like had no qualms with using the gun around innocent people. She was just like, if they die, they die.
Yeah. I hate that. That's something that has always bugged me. And like my nephews right now are really into superhero movies. And when the superheroes are fighting in these big cities and the buildings are crashing and the people are running, I'm like, how many civilians? I mean, obviously these are like fiction. Like how many civilians are dying or like in pain or suffering because of this big like chase through the sky? I feel like and I think it was Golden Loin who like called that out. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna like hurt the innocent people," and when they're like, "Well, whatever," it's like, ugh, it's my pet
Mhm.
peeve.
Oh yeah. Well, you guys are uh champing at the bit for Barbie, but on that same release day is another movie that deals with this subject matter of building the biggest gun, you possibly can, aka the atomic bomb. There even in this film, there's a moment where an air raid siren goes off, right? So they have those in this world.
It's like
Is that when it
yeah,
was
well,
a
it's the
warning?
monster alarm.
But wasn't
Yeah.
it saying like retreat, retreat? It's a drill, don't worry, but like run, hide, it's just a drill.
Yeah. It was like this is the monster alarm. It's just a drill, but yeah, get off the streets.
Yeah. Well, there's also like a mistaken identity plot, uh, you know, sort of like how deep fakes and AI are now becoming rampant. You could have any kind of recorded evidence of something and have its legitimacy be called into questions because it's easy to fake that kind of thing. And here, he kind of tries to do the same gotcha technique with the perpetrator, but you have this character Nimona who's capable of shape-shifting into any being she wants to. So
The
obviously,
truest deep fake of all is Nimona.
yeah, yeah,
She is
this
the AI of the time.
recording's never gonna fly because there'll be so many people able to just write it off as, oh, it's a trick.
Well, it was weird to me that they were like, "Ah, that's not me." But I was like, did they not record the whole time when they were like, "Haha, just kidding, that's Nimona," because that's what I would have posted the whole thing. Like, they got to be better at tricking people.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess Ballister had his own little recording device that, yeah, that moment, was confusing to me, certainly, because I was like, oh wow, she's straight up, killed this character, Golden Loin, and they're making a joke out of it. What kind of a
Well,
movie is
well,
yeah.
yeah, it was like the way they were reacting. They're like, and I was like, okay, they're not really dying. There's a trick here. There's something's about to
Yeah.
happen. I didn't know if he was in on it or if it was Nimona, but I was like, something is off. But I didn't notice. So, like, I know when she turned into Ballister, she had the red streak in the hair. I didn't even think to like look back and see if there was a red piece on Golden Loin during that part because I don't remember one. But usually there's like a
Yeah.
tell because when she's animals, she's red, but when she's people with like a little bit of red. So I'm like,
Yeah, I guess there's a certain limitation as to her coloring. But yeah, she is able. I didn't notice like the red streak, but I'm sure there probably was something like that for all of
yeah,
her.
it was on Ballister. It was like in
Mhm.
his hair. So then
Okay.
I was like, okay. I was like, I need to go back and look because now I'm like, was there a tell on him or was it hidden so they wouldn't know?
Interesting.
I'm sure that there was. Mom brain, sorry, keep going.
No, well,
I got distracted by your dog. I was just like, puppy.
I mean, this movie, it's sort of done in the traditional sensibility of a PG animated movie for kids primarily. So it's like you're not going to get very explicit violence or death on screen, but there is a fairly overt death scene right at the start with the coronary what do they call that? The
The
knighting
knighting
sequence. Yeah,
ceremony.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like a knighting ceremony.
Um, so it's willing to go there, and Ballister gets his arm chopped off. There's no visible blood, but they're careful to like frame the arm getting cut off strategically so that you don't really get a super good look at it. And then he gets, I guess, it's just easy to get fairly easy to get a prosthetic limb in this world. Kind of makes
Well, and
sense.
he made it, which was kind of wild.
Yeah, how? Jeez. I guess maybe, he gets taught all sorts of skills in the Knighthood Academy.
They're like, just in case you get anything cut off, you can replace it with metal.
So it's like Auto Mail from Full Metal Alchemist. That's another system of magic combined with technology. Um, and yeah, I guess I wonder here the mystical arts and the extent to which they're employed in a sort of public, out in the open fashion. Clearly magic is commonplace in this world, but to what
But
degree
not
are
shape.
there? Well,
Yeah,
shape shifting is, but yeah, like
that's like,
general spell casting. I'm wondering.
Well, that was something I wondered because Nimona was like, oh, people hate me. But it didn't seem like she was like out shape shifting around people very often. So I was like, did they just not like her because she was like crazy and like an orphan person? Or did people know she was a shapeshifter? Because I feel like that would have been common knowledge since they're afraid of monsters.
they do that whole flashback with her from 1,000 years ago, and she had the people really scared of her and like poking her with the um
Pitchfork.
pitchforks. Yeah.
Pork chop.
I mean, if you're attacked by your own like friends at that level, you probably forever just think people hate you. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that was
maybe.
just like in the back of her brain. Cause yeah, I didn't know she was gonna be a shapeshifter. It's not like something kind of like teased it or gave it away. And then like all of a sudden she's a rhinoceros. And I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
She's very
It's a unicorn. That was a rhinoceros.
yeah. She's very like chaotic and almost malicious. You think, she has at least violent expressions in the way she talks. But she's never overtly murderous or anything. She clearly
I
has an
thought she wanted
appreciation.
to be like a super villain. I mean, maybe she was just using that word like that he was gonna be this, bad guy or whatever, but
Yeah, but she has a moral center, clearly, and like she didn't aspire to be the leader of their little band, their merry band of misfits. She just wanted to be. She made him promise that she could be his sidekick. That was all. So like there's a good message there of like she's not some crazy megalomaniac. She's just kind of a humble demon.
Yeah,
No,
so she's like misunderstood. And I
yeah.
think that because people misunderstood her in the beginning, she was like, well, because people don't like me and they don't even know me, I should give them a reason not to like me. And that's why she was like, oh, people don't like him, so we're gonna get along great. And he's like, no, 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 no. I like people. I'm not a bad guy. And she was like, crap, I guess I gotta be somewhat good. And so I think like in her nature, I don't think that she was drawn to like be evil. I think that it was like she was just like that because she was misunderstood. So she felt she had to be that way.
I think maybe part of her nature as this supernatural creature is that she kind of reflects the world around her. She probably plays off of the emotions of the people with whom she interacts. And so if she's having violence done against her, then she might respond with violence. But if she's being treated compassionately, then she'll act in kind. I think that's a big sort of theme, I think, of this film and the franchise really is, do unto others as you would want them to do to you. And the fact that so many kind of out of paranoia or self-righteousness kind of cling to these ideas of isolation and purity, that that lends them to not even barely hesitate to act violently towards things that are kind of foreign or alien, even if they're not dangerous necessarily or threatening. Obviously, something as powerful as Nimona could be a threat, but that was never her intention. That's just her nature. But because she demonstrated this strange power, this magic, there were plenty of people willing to just execute her at the drop of a hat.
Right. I mean, even Glorith, who they had a considerable friendship, they had built this relationship, this bond, really like gave like a 180. Like she didn't even give her an opportunity to explain that it wasn't her fault or that, she was just protecting herself. Like that quick betrayal of, oh my gosh, she is so different. And now like she's nothing to me. She's like not canceled, but do you know what I mean? Like Garth was really quick to be like, okay, I'm gonna kill you now. Like you're like a monster. And I was like, wow, that was sudden. Like, didn't you guys have like years of best friendship behind you?
Well, and I think a lot of it also has to do with like how impressionable kids are. Is that like if you act as a parent or as an adult, if you act like this is bad, if something is different, this is bad, then as kids get older, they will go, oh yes, that person is different from me. They are bad. Therefore, I will ignore them, or I will, in their case, try to kill them. And so I think because, they had heard of like, oh, monsters and this, and then she sees her change. And like when she would change with her, they were like playing and being like having fun. But when she's like, she was like protecting herself. But because she's a kid, she doesn't see it like that. She's like, oh, she's being a monster. And she set the whole town on fire. So she's like, because this is like ingrained in her at this point, she's like, nope, monster. You know what? Thought we were cool? Monster. And that's kind of like what they're doing in the future. These kids are like playing like the Hunger Games, but it's like, oh yeah, I caught this monster and I killed it. And they're like teaching kids that. And that's kind of like I feel like Nimona, she wanted to be accepted. And so that's when she sees that kid, when she's the big dragon, she changes to a kid and she's like, it's okay, it's okay. But because they're like, it's ingrained to them to be afraid of that kid was like, I'll stab you, girl. You better get away. And so it's like, I think that's a big part, is that like you cannot like force these kind of beliefs on kids, because they're just going to grow up and they're going to keep teaching that, as they go on in their life, and they're going to teach it to their kids. And it's just going to, 1,000 years later, they're still going to be hateful or afraid. That's another one.
So much fervor right now, over the impressionability of kids. I think that's one of the primary drivers of at least the intensity of some of the rhetoric that we hear within certain kind of political narratives. That kids shouldn't be exposed to certain issues, and especially the themes of this movie around LGBT issues, and plenty of probably parents who would expressly forbid their kids from watching a movie like this because of those themes. But a big part of, I think, what is going on within that whole milieu, it does boil down to the impressionability of kids. But there's something about how kids are being impressioned to conform, I think, in a certain way, or there's a certain sense of inferiority that's being foisted upon kids, not necessarily by their parents. I think our culture is maybe saturated in that. People are endlessly competing. They're comparing. Who has the most? Who has? Are we keeping up with the Joneses? I remember being a kid and even struggling with, the notion of another kid being older than me. Like, I would be jealous if a kid in my class's birthday came before mine. They turned 7 before I did. There was a certain amount of ire I would level towards people who had that advantage over me. So it's like these things really do kind of stick to kids, unfortunately. And I think that creates a lot of dysfunction that leads them to struggle with identity issues. But people, of course, they balk the most heavily at anything having to do with like issues surrounding sex or gender, whatever. These are the hot buttons, these drive the clicks, these drive the the hysteria. Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, even today, my nephews, they're only 3 and 4. And we've noticed how much they hate losing. And we're like, where are they even like learning this from? Like, we're not really a competitive family. We're not even really like a sporting football family, but like tears and anger when they lose. And I had mentioned earlier in this recording, like they've gotten into superheroes. And one of the theme songs is the good guys win and the bad guys lose, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever. And so like they're associating winning Candyland with like good. You know what I mean? And I think it starts really innocently. Parents and society were like, oh yeah, the good guys win, awesome, blah blah blah. But like also like the good guys can lose too sometimes. Like that's okay. And I'm not a parent yet, but I have to assume like even when you try to combat that, you don't want to do it like too much the other way. It's like, oh, it's cool to be a loser. Like
Yeah, well, it's like a very fine line to like tread, because like we've been like that. Like we want our kids to be inclusive, but we don't want to shove it in their face. And we want we want them to accept everyone, but we also want them to be able to like determine when someone is not being nice to them. Like yes, be nice to people, but not if they're being mean to you. But like but also don't be mean back. It's like such a fine line, because you don't want them to like be bullied or picked on, but you also don't want them to bully or pick on people. And so it's like, and then, and they're also their own people with their own brains. Believe me, you're going to learn. You're going to learn today, or at least in the next year. You're going to learn.
Yeah. I believe it. So then when you see these things in the shows, like with Nimona and Gloria, have we decided what her name is?
Glorious. It's glorious.
Yeah. You can see how this, like the society and the culture, how these things trickle down. Like, I'm not sure how the whole like kingdom decided that like gay is okay, but like you'd think that they would also be like to the point of shape shifting's okay. So I think maybe when you're hiding things behind a wall and it becomes taboo, like that's when it's going to have the biggest negative effect on the culture potentially. I don't know. Maybe it's like is being open and being honest about everyone and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of like when you were saying that you think a lot of it has to do with culture. I agree, because there is a lot where he's like, oh, the institution. And she's like, who cares about the institution? Let's tear it down. And I think that's kind of like what they're kind of talking about, like society and culture, because it's like, if this wasn't a problem, if we weren't afraid of these monsters, if the institution wasn't telling us to be this way, then you wouldn't really have, like, people wouldn't be afraid of her. And I guess because she is at least that we know of in this society, she is the only one that's like this. So that's why she's scary to them, because they've been told, by society for thousands of years that this is scary. And so it's like, yeah, if we tear down the institution, then monsters are cool.
Well, it's a very
people who are different.
Yeah, punk rock is certainly a strain that runs heavily throughout this film. So that makes a lot of sense. The sort of chaos, anarchical quality of not only the film, but the character, Nimona herself. I just love her like facial expressions and just that. Yeah, she's very Joker-esque in many ways. But and she presents herself as a villain, but clearly, a character that's got a lot of heart. And yeah, there's a lot of noble qualities to her as well. So it's not like she's purely, this tear the whole system down type of person. I mean, she's largely that, but you have to be careful, I think, approaching anarchic sensibilities, because and they do appeal to me in some regard. Like that we all have a certain fascination with characters like the Joker or I don't know, the punk rock musicians, the films of
punk rock Spider-Man.
Yeah, Danny Boyle or Quentin Tarantino films. It's just who else is that character from the recent Spider-Verse movie. He was like the far and away like the highlight of that film, I think. But this line, we have to kind of ride where, it's easy to kind of just say tear it all down. So we need to try to hold on to areas that are, signs of success within our lives, within our society, and not just focus on the negative, because failure is commonplace. It's unremarkable. Success, triumphs, these things are rare. These are the things that we should look to, for our inspiration. Sure, it's fun to watch an explosion, not so fun to clean up after it.
Exactly.
And if anything, with them blowing up the wall, they got to drive their flying cars out into the wilderness.
Yeah.
Yeah, now they have a trade route.
Yeah, they were like, oh wow, there's like just like pretty land out here. Cool. Let's go on a trip.
Exactly. Well, yeah, they didn't totally eradicate the ability to use things like flying cars and cool toys like that. So that luxury is something that continues within this society. Yeah, just who knows what'll be on the other side of that wall, but maybe find out in Nimona too. But yeah, like preserving things, tradition, there's a reason why we have it. So while we always need to be configuring, kind of reassessing. We brought this up in our elemental episode, Bridget, but like even if you can think of a million reasons why something shouldn't work, if you can find one reason why it should, then that has the potential to overrule and override all the reasons why you can't do something. The positive just so just vibrantly outshines the negative. At least, if you are a person of a certain kind of orientation, disposition towards life, if you have a certain optimism, I guess, that you're capable of harnessing, then you'll see things in that sort of Lady Gaga, million reasons, kind of way, and find ways to make something work out of even the most darkest of scenarios. And with elemental, of course, it was the idea that a person made of pure fire could coexist with someone of pure water.
Well, yeah, and I think that was kind of like something that they were leaning into too, because of course, like Nimona's like, yeah, let's tear it all down, because of course it was like discriminatory against her, but it was like in the same sense, like what the queen had been doing by bringing in people who were of the common folk. She was like trying to make it where like everyone can be a part of protecting us. Like there's nothing wrong with having a group of people who protects the town, but then you had the other people who are like, no, it should only be royalty, and that's where the whole movie comes from. So I think that is like a good message of the movie. It's just like, yeah, like some things, like tradition is fine, but yeah, like reevaluate why, like where it comes from and how you do it to be inclusive and like be nice to people.
Yeah, we're always learning new things. Yeah.
And I think that's why Ballister was less, rejective of the institution. He was sort of like trying to figure out still how he could fit into it and how he could, kind of reconnect with it, because I do think he saw the good and he saw the potential and he saw the chances within the existing culture. And so like Nimona feeling that rejection, she wasn't able to see that. So them coming together and sort of, sharing their perspective, I don't know, it kind of led to them both sort of seeing like,
well, yeah, because I mean, he was an orphan on the streets who now gets to be a knight and gets to be like, people respect him or they will respect him, because of course people were like kind of iffy about it. Yeah, and then like once they were like they were like, oh, we could be him.
Yeah, like he realized like there's little kids out there sitting in the audience like cheering for me, like, yeah, there's some naysayers, but like there's a lot of acceptance in this room too. I mean, until his laser blew up. But for a few seconds he had it all.
Oh, and the laser went off and I was like, did they just kill her? I was like, she's fine, and they were like, he killed the queen. I was like, oh no, she's not. Okay, Okay, I was just making sure. I will say my favorite nod, at least to adults, because of course, like I know my kids didn't get it, is when she was the whale and they're like dropping through the levels and they fall and Todd's in the bathroom and she was like, "Is it cold in here?" And they fall again. I cackled. I love like little adult Easter eggs because like I know my kids are not gonna they're not gonna know what that means, but I knew what that meant.
I missed that, but I did like the comedy, the little like jokes here and there. I liked how it was funny without trying to be like too funny, you know?
They
Like
weren't forced.
yeah. And the shape-shifting battle scenes I thought were very good and very, very entertaining. Usually if there's like scenes like that where people are just, fighting and battling, I'm like, eh. But with the shape-shifting element, it was so much fun to watch. Especially that first battle scene where she's like a whale and then I don't even remember, a cat. Like she's all these different.
Yeah, she was like a rhino. I'm pretty sure she was an ostrich. She was an otter of some kind. Yeah, I'm like, I don't remember what else. Because she also did some of the same ones again. Like she did an armadillo at some point. I think that was in the scene with whatever her name is. Gosh, it's not going to stay in my brain.
Not the director.
Loris?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Something.
Glorith. Yeah, is
Yeah,
the
Glorith.
figurehead. I think the director character only is known as the director.
Yeah, so that was Frances Conroy, and I love her. She's in every season of American Horror Story, and I could pick out her voice as soon as she started talking. I was like, they got Frances in this.
Great voice. She's the archetypal Disney princess character in this. In the way she's designed, modeled. So yeah, the aesthetic is very much, the big alien eyes of, a lot of the Disney characters and princesses and stuff. So round, the almond shape and the face, but yeah, a lot of similarity to some of these classic design conceits, but probably not, spending $200 million plus on a project like this, as they did with Elemental or your typical Disney or Pixar film.
I couldn't find really any budgeting information about this, and maybe that's because it flip-flopped between studios, but I couldn't even see I guess I don't really know how Netflix determines financial success because it's like free streaming, but is there a way
I think it's off of like views. I think they go off of like viewership.
Were you able to see if like financially this one was successful despite all of its bouncing?
If it generates a lot of buzz just kind of in internet postings and things like that, then that's a sign that it's achieved a certain level of cultural penetration, and that's really kind of what these blockbuster type films, these animated films, trade on the most. It's how much do these characters stick in the minds of audiences, and that's certainly something that a company like Disney has exploited for ages with their marketing and their parks, representation characters and things like that. And of course, they've been successful to varying degrees throughout the history of the company. So I don't know, Netflix, will they have a theme park level of character roster, to where people would celebrate seeing these characters out, doing photo ops and things like that.
It says as of a week ago, there had been 3.2 million views in the first week. It was number 9 on the top 10, and it was about 5.5 million hours viewed.
That sounds like a lot to me, but I have no idea what to compare it to.
I mean, it made it on the top 10. Like, I know that there was one movie or one show that I watched that was really good.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of it anymore. It was like a year, but it never hit like the top 10 and they canceled it. And I was like, are you freaking serious? Because it was so good. It was made by the people who made Dark, but because it didn't hit the top 10, they canceled it. I was so mad. 1899, I think maybe is what it was called.
Okay, yeah.
With James Franco?
What was it?
Was that with James Franco? Oh no, I know what you're talking about.
No. It was like a period piece, and you have no idea what's going on, and everyone is speaking in a different language.
Sure.
Like,
everyone speaks a different language. It was, well, no, it was like supposed to be like that. Like I watched it just in English. I didn't realize that everyone was speaking in different languages, but it was supposed to kind of be like people can still make connections with other people regardless if they don't speak the same language. It was kind of crazy, and the ending of this season, I was like, oh, I was so excited for a second one, and then Netflix was like, no. It was a good show. I'm a fan. Okay, but if you watch it, just know there's not going to be another one.
Well, at least, yeah, they're not taking it off the service. Continue, Jody.
If this one has enough popularity, do you know, is there a sequel to the book or like the original source material, or are there multiple books in this series, or was this a one and done
I think it's multiple. Let me see.
Yeah, how many issues were there?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. Web comic.
Oh, I thought you meant issues as in like problems making it. I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
No, of the comic book, Stevenson initially published Nimona online on Tumblr. Wow, collection of 1 and 2 page comics. Experimental.
I think it's just one, and it's 11 individual, like it's like 11 chapters.
Interesting.
Which they're doing that a lot. So there's actually there's been a couple of shows that started as like webtoons or graphic novels that have like been made into stuff by Netflix and whatnot. Like there's a show called Lookism that is, I think it's originally like Korean, but it started in a webtoon and now it's a show. It's pretty interesting. Okay. He was also kind of a shapeshifter.
I know. Good call, Bridget, looking up the stats because Netflix does publish certain of their viewership statistics. The global top 10 is what I'm seeing here. And Nimona currently is number 3 with over 6,700,000 views and 11,500,000 hours. Two weeks in the top 10. Extraction 2 and The Outlaws are higher. But it's seems to be doing fine. Who knows how the analytics for streaming will shake out as we kind of learn more and more about how success is measured within the streaming space. But I mean, Netflix is certainly the heaviest hitter within that space, so it's at least kind of safe being with a company like Netflix and having the kind of protective wall of as robust a institution as Netflix protecting it. But
if it doesn't do good, they just won't make another one. They're like, okay, that's fine.
They won't strip it from existence, like some of these other ones are doing. But I haven't really delved that deeply into Netflix, partly because like with all the it gets tricky with the profile sharing and stuff. But now my individual household in which I live has its own Netflix account, and so I'm getting more into just checking out the app and seeing what's all on there, because I am
bite the bullet as well. We were password sharers, and we're like, all right, time to pay our dues.
Yeah.
See, I used my parents for a long time, and then I met Godfrey, and he had his own, and I was like, who are you? Oh, you're made of money? Okay. And so we've had one for a while, but his mom uses ours.
I share the account with my parents, so I'm kind of the administrator of the account. So I I used to like not be able to download shows onto my phone because too many people are logged in at the same time. And no, don't have to worry about that now. I can download away. I can search away, whatever. It's kind of well, and we have the most premium subscription with the 4K and all that stuff. So, wouldn't want to settle for less than the best. And now I can watch all the Drive to Survive I wish on repeat. All right. Well, yeah, Nimona, she is a complicated character, but very compelling. Thousands of years old, kind of this elemental being. And she doesn't necessarily look like the traditional Disney princess either, but I mean, she's it's not like I wouldn't hit it. No. Gosh.
Well, her being like feisty, and then her being short, I was like, that fits. Her being a short, feisty woman, that fits. All short girls are feisty. I'm convinced.
In terms of her wisdom, she refers to Vallister at one point as small-minded, and I mean, she's a 1,000-plus-year-old being dumping on a feeble human, so you have to lend a certain amount of grace to people who just haven't had the life experience to really know better. So yeah, it's we're all at different stages in our development, and we're only given a certain amount of time on this world, so it's tough to kind of really know where we fit into the grand scheme of things. But kids especially, they've got a lot to pick up on in the limited amount of time that they have been here, so I feel for them. All right, well, yeah, any other thoughts on Nimona?
I think if you have Netflix, watch it. It was great, and I'm happy we did.
Yeah, thank you guys for.
Yeah, don't look up spoilers. Just watch it. She's like chaotic good. She is the embodiment of chaotic good to me. So yeah, it was really cute. Big fan.
Yeah. You guys hear noise in the background? I think this thing filters
There's a
out.
thunderstorm above my house right now. I can hear. If it sounds
really?
like a shaky, buffy sound, and like the rain's about to come pouring down, so it might be.
That's so weird. It's not storming here at all.
It's on its way.
It doesn't even look like it's gonna storm. You're like, it's coming, girl. Prepare yourself.
It's black at my house right now.
I'm gonna go put my umbrella down after this.
Yeah. I know I went on a bit of a few like tangent briefly on like Netflix's cultural resonance, and what if there was a Netflix theme park or something like that. And I mean, I did kind of think of that based on my perusal of the profile pictures you can have for your Netflix profiles. And it's like, what are the franchises that are being represented here? And there's not really anything I'm overly attached to. I ended up going with from Cobra Kai. Well, Danny LaRusso, Daniel LaRusso from Cobra Kai. I was tempted to do Johnny Lawrence, the former member of Cobra Kai, the blonde one. Because I like, but he's kind of a doofus, and so I think I resonate more with Daniel.
I need to double check. I'm gonna check tonight because I don't remember.
Well, my oldest likes to change ours, so with funny names, and so hers is the Sea Beast, the Red Sea Beast. My son's is one of the little dragons from the Dragon Prince show. And then and ours is a character from Agretsuko. So which I'm fine with. I watched Agretsuko. It's a fun show if you guys like anime. Okay. And also hate working in a corporate office very much.
I hate that, and I love TV, so that sounds perfect.
Okay, so it's like Severance, but anime. It's like corporate
Yeah.
weird stuff.
She hates it so much, but because it's like Japanese culture, you just kind of like have to suck it up and take all the abuse from your the people you
Oh,
work with. And then she goes to a karaoke bar and screams death metal, but she's like a red panda. It's
okay.
very funny. It's a cute show.
That,
Huh.
that sounds fascinating. Uh,
Yeah.
you might
I
have
watched a
to,
lot of random things.
yeah, you
I was
might
gonna
have
say, I
to.
don't think that's ever shown up on my recommended for you list, but I will seek it out.
I watch a lot of anime, so well, in Netflix, they actually brought a ton of anime on, so now I get recommendations like nonstop for new anime. So
Type it in the chat because there's no way I'll be able to remember that
I
title.
will.
Thank you. All right. Final thoughts or places people can find you if you so wish to share. Start with you, Bridget.
You can find me on Instagram. That's Bridget Bridge with a T 5246.
Jody.
And I'm not really anywhere right now, and nor do I plan to be for the next like 6 months. So like you can find me here, or you can find me in the nether, in the nowheres.
It might be more like 2 years. You're gonna be more
Yeah,
tired.
bye.
No, it's all good. On the Thoughtcast, that's all we need. Conversations about animation. We talk about mostly blockbuster entertainment here, but sometimes we'll find a hidden gem or a throwback. And thoughtcast.com, all kinds of podcast streaming services, and at Thoughtcast on Twitter and Instagram. Find me, Philip Elke, at Philip Elke on Twitter and Instagram. And maybe there'll be a few other, there seems to be a few other social media platforms popping up, understandably. So who knows how that'll settle out in the, no, you know how, all the Twitter fiasco. There's like, what is it called? Oh yeah, Threads.
Threads. Yeah.
I don't have one, but I've heard the I think you have to have an Instagram to like have a thread,
Yeah.
and I don't use my Instagram and I can't remember my password, so I don't have a thread, which it's fine. Like I don't need it.
I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, it's like linked to Instagram, and if you try to delete it, you have to delete your Instagram. So beware.
Apparently
they're trying to fix it, but I heard about that yesterday.
Oh
and I was
no,
like,
that's not an accident. That is intentional, honey. What's his name? Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
the meta guy.
Yeah, Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows.
He said, "Yo, you gonna keep it. You gonna keep what you signed up for."
You're gonna download that. You're never gonna delete it.
Speaking of like algorithmic generation, I've had my first experience with Disney Genie, and that was confusing.
It seems confusing.
It recommends things based on preference, and I just didn't take the time to like set, what are my preferences, what do I want to see, and so it's just kind of like throwing up random stuff, and it's changing constantly, and it's like
we only used it when we went to Epcot to do the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and then I did not look at it. I was like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't know how to use this.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's the fast pass system. Like
it was so easy.
Well, yeah, of course, my sister and I each put down $50 so that we could make sure we got on Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. So yeah, paid $25 for Genie Plus an additional 25 for the reservation for Resistance. So hey, it was worth it. That thing.
The cost of the park ticket on top of all this, it's just wild. Like,
you're encouraging it, Philip. What are you doing?
I've done it too. I did it too. I paid $18 to ride on the Ratatouille ride all around the kitchen floor in Epcot. So
we rode it, and we didn't pay to ride that ride. They made you pay for it.
Well, I guess I could have stood in line.
Like, dang it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, we did stand in line for like 2 hours. And then because you have to hit you have to either get on at 7 or 1 to get that Guardians ride. And so we were literally on the ride, the Ratatouille ride at 1 o'clock. And we were like, our phones had no reception. And we were like, hurry up. We did. It was like right as we pulled in, we got reception, 1 o'clock. We were on it. I was like, it was the most stressful Ratatouille ride I've ever ridden on.
I'm
pretty chaotic.
Skeptical of like the service dropout potential that you might experience at a place like Disneyland or a theme park. Like there's so many people on their phone. Gosh, and invest in portable chargers. Whoever would is in the portable charger racket, at the modern day theme parks, it must be making a killing. So that's one thing. Yeah.
I took one the last time we went, because your phone, especially because everything's on the app now, and it's like if your phone dies, you're just kind of screwed.
Yeah, totally. So definitely had my charger handy.
When Netflix opens their theme park, we just gotta hope that they give us something a little better. Even if the characters are way worse and the rides are nothing, like maybe they'll have a fast pass system, so I'll go to Netflix land.
Yeah, the Stranger Things ride. You go in the upside down.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, they have enough stuff that they could honestly probably do their own theme park. You know what? Partner with Universal.
The Squid Game.
Really make Disney mad.
The Squid Game experience. Yes. They're making not to like.
I don't want it.
Really?
I don't want the American version.
Oh, I don't want the American version either. I want the sequel to the Asian version.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's what I thought you meant, was the American version that they're talking about making. And I'm like, the thing about it though is that the American one's just gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much medical debt. I need to do the Squid Games for my medical debt.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be too close to home. It's gonna be too close. I don't want it.
Please forgive my college loans. No, you have to fight to the death to get your college loans. But I was just a kid.
Yeah.
Well, if you die, you don't have to pay them anymore. Okay, I guess that's fine too.
the Galactic Star Cruiser's closing now, and it's like stuff like that doesn't really. I'm much more just a lazy, deadbeat who likes passive entertainment. That's why I avoid social media, so I don't get spoiled on my Formula One results every week. There's a race. Because I'll usually catch the replay, hours after it's already aired in, whatever European country or whatever it's being held in. So often there's significant. It's at weird hours if you're in the U.S. typically. So it's like
you sound like Godfrey. Godfrey does that with soccer. He's always like, I can't look. The game was at 6 o'clock in the morning our time, so I have to not look at anything. Can't even look at his phone, because like now the phone, if you even if you look it up once, it pops up automatically now as like it's like, hey, it does it on my phone all the time, and I'm like, oh, your game's on. He's like, don't tell me, I don't want to know. And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna tell you.
stupid algorithms. I guess that will be an advantage to when AI is intelligent enough that you can just talk to it like a normal conversation. And
they're trying with Snapchat.
Yeah, you can just tell it, okay, don't show me anything related to soccer or Formula One or whatever, and mute this subject for. I mean, I'm sure there's already ways to kind of mute things, but I don't think it's very reliable. But whatever. And of course, you wouldn't want to have to tell that to every single social media app, your search engine, Google. That would get annoying too. So it's like you'd want to.
We need that movie Her. Remember
yeah, your assistant. Your
Mm-hmm.
Also your love interest.
Yeah.
You know what? You don't need people anymore. You just need her.
Scarlett Johansson. And who was it? Joaquin
Phoenix.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That movie's actually very iconic. So
there'll still be people who want to be around other people, but then there'll probably be people who can do without being around other people, and they'll just stick to their AI assistants.
They won't even have her. They'll be like, no, too much interaction. No, thank you.
Yeah, be quiet.
I'll stick with my Amazon Alexa. Don't speak to me.
Good to have options. And there's some people just want to move to a cabin in the woods and fish off the land. All right. Well, okay. We'll wrap this up here. Nimona.
Fish off the land. Nimona.
Directed by, once again, Nick Bruno, Troy Quayne. It's on Netflix, and we'll be back on the Thoughtcast at some point. A lot of multiversal madness that we could talk about here. We get the Spider-Verse and the Flash recently, but instead we decided to do something a little different. But yeah, Barbie for sure. Thank you both, Jody and Bridget. We'll see you next time. And everyone out there, have a magical day. Have a wonderful week. Warm hugs from the Thoughtcast.